Good afternoon. We're here with Paul Gable, the Grand Strand Daily, and we're talking politics all over the state. Paul Gable, in my opinion, is one of the most informed, best journalists in our area. If you haven't read the Grand Strand Daily, grandstranddaily.com, guys, you got to read it. If you want to be informed and know what's going on, we recommend it. Myrtle Beach SC News, we recommend you follow the Grand Strand Daily. We certainly do, and I certainly I consider Paul a friend, and I also consider him informed, and that's what I care about. He's competent. So, Paul, before I get started,
well, look, first let me say thank you for the introduction, but don't overplay me, okay?
Okay, well, he's a hack. No, I'm joking. He's not a hack. Here's what I want to say before we get started. What do you make of this wonderful weather? I mean, I'm hearing about all these storms everywhere. Man, we are just living in paradise here this week.
I saw something. I just saw a quick headline. I didn't read the story this morning about there's 600,000 people without power in Michigan from the snowstorm. You know, it's the way the jet stream's working, and we've had, you know, a mild winter for us. I mean, we have. And here we are. It's basically spring in February right now. I don't know as I make much of anything about it. You know, we've had good springs and bad springs since I've been down here. I can remember snow in March and I can remember stuff like this where the pollen's already out. I wish it wasn't, but you know, it is what it is. But it's certainly nice on the heating bills, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm told by a local meteorologist who happens to be a friend of mine that we may reach 80 today, 80 degrees in February.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well,
that's unheard of. It's wild. But no one's tuning in to me, my ugly face, to hear the weather. So let's talk about Tuesday night. There was an Horry County Council meeting. A lot of things on the agenda. Paul, why don't we start wherever you want to start? There's 2 or 3 items that I want to talk about, but let's start. I know did you follow the meeting Tuesday night?
Yeah, I watched it on the live stream.
Okay, what did you make of it?
Well, first of all, council deferred any reading on the second reading on the change to the flood ordinance until they hear from FEMA.
Okay, let's talk about that, because a lot of my viewers, and yours probably are very informed. Some of mine aren't so much informed. What happened with FEMA, the flood zones, the Board of Appeals? What happened there exactly?
Well, actually, this whole issue became a big deal because of a 46 lot parcel on Highway 905, right? And
Correct.
They were told that they were grandfathered in under the old ordinance. And
who told them that, Paul? Who told them they were grandfathered in?
I have been told that David Jordan said that to a couple of county council members that inquired when they first considered putting this ordinance in.
Does David Jordan write laws for Horry County?
No, but he has a lot of input into it as the head of the Infrastructure and Regulation Division.
He has input into it.
But the consideration was that he would that this lot would be grandfathered in, which would be normal because, you know, I had a discussion of this with one of our flood advocates, or not flood advocate, but an advocate against flooding and what have you. And the statement was that I forget exactly, but I had to get into it. You know, if you put in an ordinance that says you got to be 3 freeboard space above flooding in what the county has determined are supplemental flood zones. Got nothing to do with FEMA map, but these are supplemental flood zones that some of it flooded in Florence and what have you. And then you put that in, unless there's grandfathering, every house that isn't built in the supplemental, every house that's built in the supplemental flood zone that doesn't hit that, and I'm talking houses that are 50 years old, I'm talking houses that are probably 100 years old, they don't conform. Well, that doesn't mean that they're illegal and they got to be torn down because they were there before. They are grandfathered in under the old rules. Now they may
Yes,
flood,
but
and it
new
may be to
construction, Paul,
yes, new
has to follow
construction.
the law.
But at what point does that happen? Does it happen
Well,
when the plat is approved?
Well, we can argue that.
Exactly, and that's one of the things. Now, you want to go to the Construction Board of Appeals. They didn't make any law. All they did was say, yes, this is appropriate for grandfathering, and we're giving you the variance on the new ordinance. That's all they did.
Okay, so here's what I'm told. I'm told that some said he was promised this and others said he wasn't. Now,
Okay.
That's neither here nor there. Here's what's here and there. There's this slippery slope with new construction. You let this guy in and you make an exception and the next guy wants in. So if he was promised that, and I'm not saying he wasn't, or the developer, I will just say the developer was promised that. Someone should have picked up the phone and called Horry County Council. And I'm going to say this honestly. I don't want an appointed board making those decisions. I want my councilman who wrote the law. They obviously wrote the law for some reason. They're the guys we elected to represent us, not an appointed board. So I took issue with this when I looked into it. Paul, just so you know, I called the supposed experts. Not a dadgum one of them would go on the record with me. I said, what's good? What's not good? I'll tell you, but I can't be quoted. I can't go on the record. Paul, I hate that kind of crap. And so I got very frustrated.
Well, stop calling county staff.
This wasn't county staff. These were the people who surveyed the place and plotted it and wrote the maps. And these were the supposed bureaucratic experts. These are the PhDs you hire to do such. So I wrote my story and I said, here's the deal. I don't know what this will do to future credits. Tax credits, folks. Credits you get because you did the highest best practices. And no one on the record will tell me. They'll tell me off the record. I'm not writing that, Paul. I'm tired of that kind of nonsense.
Well, let me say this to you. If you recall, when we first heard that the Construction Board of Appeals had given this variance, right? There was all kinds of stories run out in some of our local media about, oh, this could affect so many things and FEMA may not sell flood insurance in the area and the whole routine, right? The fear factor was thrown right out there because that was convenient for, in my opinion, a few members of county staff to try and get their way. The point is this: FEMA's never made a determination. We have supplemental flood zones that were designated by Horry County Council. Got nothing to do with FEMA flood zones now. They're supplemental flood zones. The idea was to keep some new construction out of those areas so that we wouldn't have the flooding of homes that we had in Florence. Now, I was told something that I find almost impossible to comprehend, okay? I was told that these new flood zones give so many points, and FEMA adds it all up, these extra credit points or whatever you want to call them, when they're considering flood insurance premiums, okay? So that FEMA, we could be affecting flood insurance premiums throughout the county by changing this. But remember, this is an Horry County Council thing, got nothing to do with FEMA in the first place. But think about this one for a minute. I said, well, so that affects new construction. Oh, no, that affects all homes. I said, so you mean to tell me that a house built 50 years ago that was built flat on the ground and wasn't subjected to being raised at all in these supplemental flood zones is going to get the same premium as a brand new house? They said yes. I said, that's insane.
But here's the deal,
for a minute. Why should a house that's more subject to flooding get the same premium as a house that's less subject to flooding? I said, here's the sense that makes. I am 76 years old. let's say the average age of Horry County is 40, and I don't know if it is or not, but I'm just going to use that arbitrarily. Why shouldn't I be able to buy life insurance based on the age of a 40-year-old rather than a 76-year-old by the same logic?
So,
It's
as
insane.
as a responsible journalist, I reached out to the highest level authority I could at FEMA, and they stiff-armed me.
Of course, because they haven't made a decision yet, David.
So in his wisdom, and he's a wise man, County Council Chairman Johnny Gardner said, we're sending this back to INR, and FEMA's going to have to sort this nonsense out for us. That was the right choice.
Yeah,
it was the right choice because FEMA won't answer me, and FEMA won't answer you. They act as though
FEMA doesn't even know what their answer is yet. That's the problem.
But these government wickety-wicks, these supposed experts, treat us like we're gum on the bottom of their shoe.
Well, you know, I didn't talk to the FEMA guy. FEMA hasn't made a decision yet. Think about this. Why should we change an ordinance that is county-wide, or at least to the supplemental flood zones that council designated, for a 46-acre lot or 46-lot parcel of land on Highway 905? That's already been given a variance. What was the panic? There was something wrong in the beginning.
I think the concern for me was this sets precedents. Number two, the fact that FEMA won't respond to me or you is wrong. They're a government agency. Number three, they will respond to Johnny Gardner. They will respond to County Council. And County Council did the right thing here. Because without the information that all the questions you raised are legitimate, and without the proper information, we don't know what to do. And you're right, FEMA probably doesn't know it's behind from a hole in the ground.
Well, it doesn't know what it's doing on this issue yet. They haven't made a decision. They have not made a decision. Now, we were told.
You probably trust government a lot more than I do, Paul.
We were told, and it was written, that FEMA said this could eliminate us from being able to participate in the flood insurance program. That's totally false. But that's information that came out of county staff. Now,
I outed some people in my article that residents can actually click on and send an email to. Why did I do that, Paul? Because they wouldn't answer who. Who would they not answer? We treat the press today like it's not the press.
Well, don't get all.
I did not rush to publish my article. I held my article for 7 days trying to come up with where's the ground here, and I never could get it resolved.
That's right, you can't.
And
the whole issue has been bungled from the beginning, and I lay the blame on county staff. Now, let me say one thing to you.
The Board of Appeals.
Well, now you've got this hang up with this construction Board of Appeals. Well, let me ask you a question, okay?
Call County Council.
Let me ask you a question. You have a zoning Board of Appeals, right?
Yes.
And from my recollection of checking, the zoning Board of Appeals virtually never turns down an appeal, which gives a variance to zoning. Should we get rid of them too?
No.
Should every variance have to come to county council?
I believe that with all my heart, I'm going to say it, okay? I'm biased. I believe in Al Allen. I believe in Johnny Gardner. We elected them for their different positions. Al is with INR. Johnny's the head of the whole deal. I trust those guys, and I think at least you make a phone call if you're going to do something that will open up a crevice that other people will try to rush into. Sorry, Paul, and we may disagree on this, but pick up the phone. You were appointed by these guys. You serve on a committee. You're accountable to these guys.
Well,
pick up the phone.
That is true, but it's not true. Now, let me tell you, are you aware of the fact that there's a state law that says a person may not appear in front of a board over which they have appointed members to, for example? In other words, a county council member cannot, even as a private citizen, in accordance with state law, go before Infrastructure and Regulation Committee or the zoning, Planning and Zoning Commission to advocate either for or against a rezoning. They can't do it. It's illegal.
Did this board reach out to FEMA, Paul? Do you know whether or not they reached out to FEMA?
I don't know.
Should they have reached out to FEMA?
I think they were. No, I don't think so because
I disagree with you.
You tell me, well, yeah, but you tell me that you're for less government and I'm for more government, and yet you're saying, well, now we got a board here that really shouldn't do anything until it reaches out to FEMA, a federal board, a federal agency, and asks the question. David, if we're going to do that, let's federalize the whole system. And
no. Here's why I'm saying that. Will 2 feet to 3 feet affect things? I don't know. Who knows? We need to have that answer before we start making changes. And no one has the Paul. I have worked my butt off on this story. No one has the answer. I've gotten maybe not, maybe it will. That's not a good answer.
Well, think about it. And this is why I blame county staff. It was never, how can I say this properly? Well, first of all, if a county staff member had not tried to make a big deal that the Construction Board of Appeals acted outside of its authority, this wouldn't be an issue. If a variance had been given and construction just went ahead, nobody would have heard about it and nobody would be panicking about it, and we wouldn't have this great convoluted mess that we have now at county about changing a whole countywide ordinance for a 46 plot lot. The whole thing is ridiculous. What was the original ordinance that we passed bad? I don't know. Should the county have designated supplemental flood zones because we had a big flood there in 2018? I don't know. That's a decision.
We may very well go with a 2 foot standard. We may very well give these people what they want. I believe this time wise people like our chairman stepped up and said, let's send this back to INR. Let's sort this mess out.
You know what's the funny part about this? We're talking about sorting out the countywide ordinance. And yes, I agree we should wait to hear from the federal government agency that is in charge of providing flood insurance for whoever wants it. Some people are required to have it, other people aren't what may want it. But in the meantime, we have a variance on the issue that supposedly started this all. We have a variance that allows construction to go forward as if it was grandfathered in.
Well, I don't like that. That is part of this whole government thing I don't like. And you know that. And you know what? When it comes to county staff, and there's one particular lawyer I'm thinking of, I'm not going to name him right now. You know that I'm not a big fan of all that nonsense. Here's the deal. There are people I trust because I know them. And I'm sorry, I'm telling my readers this. I've watched them operate. They've been trustworthy. I think ultimately the right choice was made. I don't know where this goes, and I'm going to be following it. I'm very upset though that bureaucrats in Washington don't believe that they have to respond to the press. Sorry, Paul, I am. Because you know what? We could have got clarity on this easily. You say FEMA doesn't know. They should know. How much is
haven't
FEMA
made a
budget?
decision yet, David.
Do you know what FEMA's annual budget is, Paul?
I haven't a clue.
It's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's probably billions, but you got to remember most of that annual budget goes to places like Horry County when we have flooding like we had, or Louisiana, or
so these bureaucrats with FEMA aren't getting paid. Is that what
I'm
you're
not
saying?
saying they're not getting paid. Most of that budget goes to recovery efforts, and you know it, and I know it.
Are they living paycheck to paycheck, Paul?
I don't
Is the
know.
head of FEMA living one paycheck to the next?
I don't know because I'll
Oh,
tell you,
come
I
on,
wouldn't want to.
Paul.
I would not
Company
want to live.
car, 3-day
Dave,
work week.
listen to me a minute. I would not want to live in the Washington D.C. metropolitan area on a couple $100,000 a year. I wouldn't do it.
He's not making that, Paul.
Well, he can't make more than the president.
Well, let's just see what he's making. Give me 1 second here. I've got it right here in my notes.
Okay.
Okay, you're right. He made $127,500.
Thank you. Isn't that amazing? I'm right.
Well, you are right. But with that said, I don't know if he lives in Washington, D.C. or not. I'm assuming he does. Typically, bureaucrats are not living paycheck to paycheck.
Well, one of the reasons they're not living paycheck to paycheck is a lot of times our bureaucrats have come from other areas of the economy where they've been well paid. But you see, you can't pay anybody in the federal government more than you pay the president. That's the law. And the president makes $400,000 a year. So
I'm going to tell you something. With Burisma and Ukraine and China, the president's making a lot more. I'm sorry, forgive me. I had to throw that out there. He's got a lot of side money. His son's selling art for whatever.
Well, let's talk about the one we had who was trying to get the big loans from Russia and loved Putin.
You're not going to get any arguments from me, Paul. I'm not a fan of the current system we have, and you know that. I believe that it's broken. Here's the situation. You make a phone call, you should get an answer timely, and you should be allowed to move forward knowing what the risks are. That's not the way things work, sadly.
Well, but see, that's the thing. If the decision hasn't been made, how can you get an answer in a phone call? What did they tell you exactly?
There were some people who said, I can tell you off the record.
Okay.
Why would I let a bureaucrat talk to me off the record, Paul?
Well, you might get some information you wouldn't get any other way. What did they tell you off the record?
I didn't publish it. I'm not going to say it, but I believe, Paul, money's involved in every decision they make, and they have all of these counterweights of conflicts that cause them to make decisions that are political more than they are good science. I keep hearing trust the science, trust the science. A lot of these people are making decisions based on political calculations rather than good science. Sorry, there you go.
And there you know why Winston Churchill said that democracy is the worst form of government other than all the others.
There's big
except
money
for all the others.
There's big money in tax incentives, tax credits, and
Absolutely.
whatnot. Now let's just call a spade a spade. And listen, once again, I think that ultimately the county is going to ask FEMA for some clarity. And I think that's a good thing. I wish you and I could do that. There was a day in America when the press was more respected than it is today. And there was a day in America when there weren't all these inherent conflicts in government choices and government decisions. And Paul, that's just the truth. It's just the truth. There was a time when there were not these inherent conflicts.
Well, let's go back to the Grant administration and the, I'm not going to remember the name of the scandal, but Oaks Ames, who was a congressman from Massachusetts and was brought before the House Ethics Committee for, he was promoting stock in one of the transcontinental railroads, and they said that he was giving stock away and or selling at a very cheap price to other congressmen in order to get all kinds of incentives for this transcontinental railroad. And Oaks Ames said, everybody knows Congress is bribed and everybody's doing it. And that's back in the 1860s or early 1870s. So,
Well,
that's history. That happened.
you and I, you're more educated on how government operates than I am. I'm not a big fan of the way government operates. Never. I realize it's probably the worst, best form of government we can have, but it sure does.
Well, it's better than having a Putin or a Kim Jong Un or somebody dictating whether we can breathe or not. But yeah,
Well,
it has its flaws. It has terrible flaws. And look, we contribute to those flaws by some of the people we elect.
But you're going to
get into that in a minute.
You're going to continue to follow that story, correct? Because I sure am.
Oh yeah.
And I believe we're going to have a good outcome. I want to tell the residents this. I'm looking for a really good outcome on this. I don't have anything against that developer. That developer has rights. I don't want to go down a slippery slope without any information. And I think FEMA should have been called first. And that's my opinion. That's just my opinion.
We should have waited to hear a FEMA decision on if we change from this to this. Does it affect us? If it does affect us, how much? If it does, how much does it affect us? We should have waited on that. But there was this mad rush, and I can't think it's anything but people and county staff trying to cover their butts. There was this mad rush to change legislation.
Which is backwards. Sorry. All right. Well, let's move on, because here's the deal, folks. This is a developing story. I believe Paul Gable will cover it fairly, and I'm certainly gonna. I can rail against FEMA all I want. If they don't want to respond, they're not going to respond. It's that simple. Especially to a small market media like mine. We're a resident-focused Myrtle Beach market media with 40,000 viewers per publication. That's nothing. That we're a nobody to them, and that's okay. We can be a nobody to them. But there was a time in America when the press was more respect than it is today. Sorry, there was. And I believe that, Paul. You can disagree with me on that, but I believe that. With that said, let's talk about what happened with Wayne Gray, who is the head of Ride 4. Ride 4 is a commission put together to help us get roads in Horry County with a penny tax. Ride 4 has not passed a referendum yet. We've had a Ride 1, a Ride 2, a Ride 3, and we've developed a lot of good roads here in Horry County with those funds. But this week, Wayne Gray made an address to County Council. Tell us what's your take on that? Give us your.
Well, it was an update. There, currently, what happens is you get this advisory committee together, and they come up with ideas. They're selected. One council member has an appointment from their district. So you have 12 council members. You have 11 districts, and then you have the chairman. They each have an appointment to the advisory committee for RIDE and then the six major cities. The League of Cities has 6 appointments. Okay, so you have an 18-member committee, and when they went in and had their first meeting, Wayne asked each of them to come up with 3 road projects that were important to them, that they thought were important to their district, that were important to the county, or what have you. They come up with a total of 34 road projects. There were some duplication among different members that thought certain road projects were important enough to include. So you got 34 projects right now being considered, and we're at the point where those 34 projects are getting a cost estimate for each one. Now, if the citizens vote in a new referendum to impose another 1 cent local option sales tax to fund the Ride 4 projects for a period of 7 years, it is estimated that will produce about $826 million in funding. The RIDE programs have been built on a pay-as-you-go basis. We haven't passed RIDE and then issued bonds. And one way of looking at that is wasting money on interest to support those bonds. We've pay as you go. We collect the money and we throw it into projects each year, and that's why the projects take a period of time to finish. We're still finishing Ride 3 projects, and of course, a new referendum won't come up till November 2024. But anyway, about $826 million. Now, there was a preliminary estimate, and now they're trying to dig down on the numbers to get a much more accurate estimate. But the preliminary estimate on those 34 projects was $3.4 billion. And that's just the 34 road projects that are being considered by the Ride Advisory Committee. $3.4 billion will raise about 826. So maybe we can do 25% of 34 road projects that have been identified as, well needed. I won't call them critically needed, but needed strongly right now in this county. So Wayne had checked through state law, and the one that I like is there is a transportation tax that is already being used in, if I've got this right, it's Charleston and Beaufort and Dorchester and Greenville, I think. Those are the counties that have instituted this through referendum and approval by the voters. It's a 1-cent sales tax, but it runs for 25 years or up to 25 years. You can make it a lesser period if you wish, but it runs to up to 25 years. If we pass that, we would have about $3.6 billion come in over those 25 years. And then we could issue bonds. We're in a position to issue bonds to get money up front that we can pay off with the revenue coming in from those bonds each year. And we could address those 34 road projects quickly, or at least a whole lot quicker than we're going to be able to address them doing it the way we're doing it with Ride. However, there's a hang up in state law. And if you have one other 1-cent local option sales tax in the county, you can't use the transportation tax according to state law. And of course, we have a 1-cent local option sales tax for schools that's countywide too. So that eliminates us from being able to use that. And the question is why? If we can have a 1-cent sales tax for roads, ride programs, and have a 1-cent sales tax for schools, school construction and school capital projects, why can't we have a 1-cent transportation tax for roads that would run 25 years rather than 7, still for roads, and still have the school tax? It makes no sense. But then that's the state legislature, and they oftentimes make no sense. It might be good for county council to go to our legislative delegation and ask for an amendment to state law that says, that if you have another 1-cent sales tax, it doesn't cut out the possible use of this 25-year transportation tax, which makes sense to me. What do you think?
So here's the question, and you I know you're aware of this. So, Representative, District, whatever districts, and Gary Loftus, who is an Horry County Councilman.
4, he's District 4.
Yeah, District 4. He brought up a question of why do we have to raise our own funding? And why do we keep having problems at the state level? Why does these other towns get their roads paved and we have to pay our own way?
Well, and let me add one thing. Most of the ride projects that we have done, except probably in the area of paving dirt roads and stuff in the western part of the county, and maybe a few other roads that have been handled in areas of the county, but most of the money that we have spent on ride road projects are on state roads.
So here's the reality, folks. The district that we've got a SEL program, Southern.
Let's not get into that one yet, David. Let's just talk about this.
We have legislators our local delegation. What is there? 11 of them, 13 of them? I don't know what the total number is.
I forget. I have a tendency not to count
either 11 or
those
13.
ones that have 2% of the county and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a guy in this part Dillon, part.
What do you mean part Dillon? He's all Dillon and has a couple of percent here in Horry County. And he's also a football coach over there, if I recall.
Yeah, they coach Hayes. They count him as part of our delegation, whether he is.
And technically he is, because a little portion of Horry County up around Nichols somewhere is included in his district, but in his legislative district. But he's not really Horry County. Let's talk about the ones on the coast and the ones, well, let's say east of Aner. The ones that a majority or all of their districts are in Horry County.
Well,
those
here's the
people
situation.
Quite simply are not doing the job.
Well, I'm going to call a spade. On Tuesday night, we had the Freedom Caucus here in Myrtle Beach. We had Adam Morgan. We had Stuart Jones. They came to talk about what's going wrong with Horry County as far as why we aren't getting any traction in Columbia. And they mentioned to a bunch of people who were not aware that we don't have one single Freedom Caucus member in Horry County, one of the most conservative counties in the state. Now, why don't we have conservative legislators when we have a conservative county? And we do have a conservative county. The reason we don't is because they're all picked by the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. That's facts.
Well, most of them, not all of them.
If you don't vote in the primary in Horry County, the chamber picked your candidate. That's just the way it goes. We have a woman, I don't have anything against her, her name's Carla Schuessler, lifelong Democrat. 6 months before an election, she flips her party to Republican. She was a former board chairman of the chamber. The chamber does all this propaganda. Walter Wetzel, he was her representative, says she's so conservative. She gets elected. We've got a Democrat now serving in Columbia from us, District 61, in Carolina Forest Brook area, that quite frankly is a liberal. What does Columbia think of that? Well, they know we're sending up these liberal Republicans, and they're not going to work with them. So funding, we don't get it. Support, we don't get it. And we keep doing this over and over and over again, and we have absolutely no credibility nor any foundational support in Columbia. Now, you can disagree with me on this, Paul, but I believe this. Gaffney, Greenville, Lawrence, Oconee, even Rock
Well,
Hill.
let me say one thing to you now. You mentioned a key county here in your argument. You mentioned Florence. And I would argue that they had a very liberal Democratic senator who went by the name of Hugh Leatherman, who switched parties back there in the late 90s or early 2000s and became a Republican when you had to get elected. But Hugh was pretty damn liberal.
Very liberal, but he was part of our he was considered part of our local delegation by the chamber.
Well, the chamber gave him a lot of money because he was so powerful. He was a Senate Finance Chairman for years. But here, let me say this to you. All you have to do to see the difference between our delegation and Hugh Leatherman is drive 378 to 95.
Correct.
When you go on Horry County, it's a 2-lane road. You hit Marion County, it's a 2-lane road. You hit Florence County, and it becomes a 4-lane road, and it's beautiful travel into 95. That's the difference. He delivered. Our boys don't. I don't care what label you give to them. The point is this.
Well, here's the deal, though.
We send more sales tax money to the state every year than we even ever think about getting back. We don't get, what do we get back? 60, 70%? Maybe less?
Easy.
I'll guarantee you Florence got 110, 120, 130% of what they sent up there came back to them in road projects. We haven't had a legislative delegation that's been able to deliver for our people. We elect, and I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, it makes no difference to me. The point is They're supposed to do their best to represent our district, and we have had terrible ones. Now, in his time, in his nearly 20 years that he spent in Columbia, Alan Clemens did a great job of running around the world, especially to Israel and Egypt and what have you, on his campaign funds, while mouthing off about how I-73 was such a great project, but never delivering any money for it. That's the kind of people we have elected. And really, when you think about it, like you say, the chamber controls our elections. If we don't boost a whole bunch of people out to knock out their candidates, you're right. But the chamber has done that because they wanted funding for their I-73 project, and our legislative delegation hasn't even been able to do that. Our legislative delegation is weak.
Let me stop you, because here's what's critical. I know that some of these delegation members, they do not want 378 4-lane before they get I-73. The funding in Ride 3 and Ride 4 was supposed to help 378 become a 4-lane from that hot spot near Gallivant's Ferry, not Gallivant's Ferry, excuse me, near 41, all the way up to Conway. But they don't want 378 4-lane. Why don't they want 378 4-lane, Paul? Because they want I-73. They want to create a pent-up need for I-73, which is artificial. They don't want Highway 9 widened to 95. Why don't they want
about a 90 or 905?
Do you think that Columbia is so stupid they don't know that our own local delegation is working against its very own residents?
Oh, I think they know. I think they know it very well, and they're not about to give into it. And I think that's why you've got no money for I-73 from the state,
and you're not going to get any.
You're not going to get any ever. The project is dead. In the meantime, we got to start electing people who worry about what's going to happen to the residents on 90 or 905 or 707 or 378, 319, along 501. What improvements have to be made there? And yes, we're talking about state roads, but at least let's get state money in to help us out so we don't have to always impose a local option sales tax. Now, let me say this. A local option sales tax in Horry County isn't the same as a local option sales tax in let's say Lexington County or Newberry County or what have you, because we do have tourists going to come here that will pay. The studies show approximately 60% of the sales tax collected in Horry County is collected from tourists, visitors, and that's good. So that means our residents don't have to come up with the same tax dollars because we're getting a boost from the tourists. But the point is, we still should get our fair share back from the state if we had any legislators, and we got a couple. Let me not throw them all in one. William Bailey's done a great job. He and Kevin Hardy have worked on that business.
William Bailey's our best, by far.
And I understand that Jeff Johnson is well respected up there. That's what I hear. Okay. Interestingly enough, they come from the western portion of the county. Of course, Bailey starts in North Myrtle Beach, but Kevin and Jeff are western part of the county. They're the much more conservative area of this county than what we have along the coast. But those guys have had at least done their best to produce for the citizens of the county. And in a lot of instances, from what I hear, they have caught problems and roadblocks from within our own legislative delegation, the group that goes along the coast or east of Conway, let's say, in trying to get what projects they wanted handled.
And the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber would love to see those guys out of office.
Oh, sure. But the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber better get in its mind one thing. I-73 is dead, and the state is sick of hearing about it, and they better shut up, and we better get in legislators that will look for the benefit of the whole county, not the benefit of the chamber, and then we'll be all right. It's going to take a couple of exercises to do that.
I would argue that William Bailey and Jeff Johnson out of Conway, Aner area, are more in step with what's going on in Columbia than our local delegation.
And I would add Kevin Hardy to that.
Kevin Hardy. Yeah.
And when you have the Heather Crawfords and the Russell Fries and the Alan Clemens when he was in, or
Luke Rankin. Come on, man.
Yeah,
That
Stephen
guy's-
Goldfinch. I mean, yes, it's absurd. It's absurd.
So,
We've got no representation up there.
So here's the deal. We could, and let's just call a spade a spade. If we had the political will, we could widen 378 to the county line today. If we could widen Highway 9 to the county line. William Bailey's been working with the COGS and the PD and throughout the state to get it widened all the way up to Rock Hill, to Charlotte.
And you know something? He's going to get that done eventually. He is, because
it's going to happen soon. He's also been working, William Bailey behind the scenes been working with the NCDOT to get 31, which is our expressway, running all the way first to Charlotte. That's going to be the first step in the next couple of years, 5-6 years. And then ultimately all the way to 40, I-40, Interstate 40, which runs through Durham, which runs through Raleigh, which runs through Asheville. We're going to ultimately end up getting an expressway so now north-south on the coastline. It's cheap. Why is it cheap? We've only got to spend enough money to get it to the county line. We're almost already there, the state line rather. We're almost already there. And North Carolina picks up the tab on it. Are we crazy or what? Why are we trying to build a $3.6 to $5 billion road when North Carolina's more than willing to pay for the infrastructure? This is stupid on steroids. And
well, our legislators, our state legislative delegation, in the most part, has not done a good job for Horry County. Period.
Because I'm going to say it, I-73 is about one thing: getting houses built in Western Horry County and making
and selling land owned by certain people and having engineering contracts go to certain firms. It's all about local greed.
Correct. Now, are we transcending that, Paul? I think we are. I think we're just now starting. It's going to take a cycle, but we're going to purge some.
It take more than one election cycle.
No, when I say a cycle, I mean a season. We're leaving an era where a handful of hotel owners in the chamber ran our county, and that's going to come to an end. First of all, the hotel owners are selling out to national concerns and international concerns, and so the mom and pop property manager is going to disappear. And with him is going to disappear the chamber's clout in demanding autonomous thinking, groupthink from our local delegation. It's a matter of when, not if. And so we're fighting the good fight here. I know you certainly have. And we need 378 widened. We need Highway 9 widened. We need all of these secondary roads built.
You need work done on 90 and 905.
90 is paramount.
And I'll tell you what, this southern bypass on Conway that needs that final link across the river there, across the Lake Busby bypass, that's going to do a nice job to help the south end anyway.
Well, folks, I want to say this to you. Paul and I can go on and on. We were almost at an hour now, and I didn't cover 10% of what I wanted to cover, but next Thursday we'll be back. And listen,
to run our mouths again.
No, this is a narrative. This is a narrative that is ongoing. And when you're talking to people like Paul Gable, he threw out the 76-year-old thing. This guy's been around. He knows where all the bodies are buried, and he honestly and truly is informed. Want to be informed? Have a listen. We meet here on Thursdays. We talk politics and be informed. I do want to say one thing. I'm an advocate for voting in primaries. We're going to have a primary in 2024. If you miss that primary and you vote in the general, you miss the election in Horry County. Facts. Republican primaries are everything. Your Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce knows that. You need to know that. We currently have
this. You get roughly 10 to 15% of the voting eligible people that show up to vote in primaries. And you're right. That's where we elect our officials from this county.
Yeah. So we will see you next Thursday. Have a blessed week. Hey guys, get out and enjoy this weather. This is the one of the warmest Februarys.
Do it before Saturday because we're supposed to have rain.
Yeah, and then this has been a really wonderful February. It's been very warm. So goodbye from Myrtle Beach SC News. We will look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Paul, thanks a lot, man.
David, thank you.